today we'll give it a few minutes, of course. Today we're going to talk about I would call it a time in the history of the Jewish people where they had leaders with wealth, with knowledge, with fear of God, with a position in the community like none other. Almost like a king, but as a democratic, if you want to call it, style, hierarchy of knowledge and authority in the one second, someone is here in the Jewish timetable. 1 second. Hello? I just put it on the side. Very good. Yeah. Oh, thank you. Sorry, Amazon deliveries all day. Okay, so this personality talks to me today more than ever because I believe I am going to be and I should be a billionaire. That's A, and he was rich, but as an opening, just to tell you who this rabbi was, he used to walk in the streets with golden shoes, but underneath there wasn't nothing. So he was walking barefoot with covers of gold. That represents Rabbi. Rebbe was a type of person that he was a billionaire, and at the end of his life, he said like this: I didn't enjoy any of the money that I accumulated all my life. Just gave. Chesed. Thousands and thousands of poor people were under his protection, under his office as a leader and as a person that makes sure and takes care of each individual Jewish person that ever existed in lifetime. And on that note, I would like to welcome Lionel.
Yeah. Sorry.
Lionel, I would love to see your face, not just the
right. Yes, okay. There I am.
Okay. A little bit small down. Very good. Oh, fantastic. So, and also Philip, who's there? Probably his son. What's his name? Chapter. How are you doing?
Paul. Thank you.
Paul, how are you doing? Good to hear. It's like I'm on the shear now. If you we'll talk.
Hello, Lionel.
Oh, hello here. Hello. I can't say hello to everybody. Well, there's only Paul left. Hello, Paul. I hope everything was good enough on Shabbos for you.
You talking to me or you talking to me?
I'm talking to Paul.
Thank you.
Everybody was talking as well. Okay, fine.
Paul, I hope you enjoyed Shabbos too.
Sorry, Lionel, were you talking to me?
Yeah. Well,
sorry.
Right.
Oh.
Which Paul? Hanasi or Chapter?
Sorry, I can't hear very well. It's not very loud. Sorry.
You see, Rabbi, how it goes chaotic as soon as Lionel comes in.
Yeah.
Okay.
I've noticed
that is a short introductory.
Sorry, just ignore me and please continue.
As if it were possible.
I will start from the beginning. I am very pleased today to talk about someone very important and very influential and a role model, specifically in today's world. I would like to represent Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi. Please come over, take the floor. Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi. Who was Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi, and what did he do to the Jewish people, and how is it that we can learn from his tremendous, he only lived for 70 years, but his tremendous influence on the Jewish people in that time. He was the Nasi. What is a Nasi? Anyone knows? He was the president, the king.
The prince.
Prince, exactly, prince. And what did he write? He wrote the Mishnah. The first, what guts did he have? The first oral written Torah ever existed for 1,000 years. Came this small guy, Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi, the great grandson of Hillel, his rabbi. His rabbi, by the way, was Rabbi Yehuda bar Eli. You all know these names because we talked about them. My son, his name is Eli, Yehuda and Eli. Rabbi Yehuda bar Eli, okay? And that was his rabbi. He lived in Usha. He learned Rabbi, and then he learned by Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. When Rabbi Akiva died, he was born. Why? As it says in the Talmud, when one son arrests, another son comes up. Every generation has it. And the Rebbe, as we call it, Rabbeinu HaKadosh, the holy, our holy master, he was born on that day. He is buried, and I'm going to show you now the Wikipedia where you can see where he was buried. On these she'arim, this is his grave. That's Rebbe. I don't think it's in Tzafat. It says the cave of Bet She'arim. Roman era Jewish village.
Yes, that was the excavations. They excavated.
If you want to know exactly where it is, David, you can visit it here. Okay.
We have visited lots of times.
Yes, I think probably I went with you, Ian. Did I?
Yes.
Wow, really?
Yeah.
Okay, I like it.
No idea that Rabbi, Yehuda Hanasi was buried there.
No, this is not Tzafat. Yeah, it's not in Tzafat.
We've been to Bet She'arim lots of times.
You've been to Bet She'arim. Look at that. Wow. Pinchas, have you been to Bet She'arim?
I think you may have
It's likely. It's likely, yeah.
It's still being excavated.
I think I have been to it, yeah.
Okay, let's get back to our point. Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi. Let's just remember that it was a time of the Roman era. They ruled, they conquered the land, especially of Judah. He had to be an acquaintance of these people, and we'll talk about it soon. His father was Shimon ben Gamliel. I don't know if you remember, we learned about Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel, but this is Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel the second. Okay? So it's like, I would say, 4 generations after the destruction of the temple. Meaning Rabbi Akiva, in his end of his life, 120 years old, died after the destruction of the temple, and he was born while he died. So it's 4 generations after. He was the president of the Sanhedrin, and as I said, his father in the city of Usha, he taught him the Greek language, and that knowledge gave him a very important role as a Nasi to the Roman authorities. Of course, in Judah in those days, they only spoke Hebrew, and they devoted, but they also had a language that they devoted with their mates. As I said, Yehuda Bar Ilai was his rabbi, and when he was a kid, he read the book of Esther in front of Rabbi Yehuda as like a test or whatever he learned it for. He went against his father in many rulings. He would say that of course. They are like angels. We're like something else. I forgot the name is, but he described that there's a huge difference between his rabbis and himself. And nevertheless, he went against them in a few areas. His other rabbi, which we also talked about in Tekoa. Anyone visit Tekoa? I lived next to Tekoa, like 5 minutes next to Tekoa. It's called Meitzad, a settlement next to Hebron. In Tekoa, who was his teacher? Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. The famous Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai was his and some people went Ben Meron. The next one is Eliezer ben Shamua. Okay. Rabbi Meir, he said, I didn't see Rabbi Meir, but one time I saw the back of Rabbi Meir, and he was always proud about that. Rabbi Meir was a miracle maker. It's called Rabbi Meir Baal Hanes. We didn't talk about him. We should have talked about him. Rabbi Meir Baal Hanes was one of the students of Rabbi Akiva, one of the oldest students, and he could make a miracle anytime he wanted. And he made miracles, plenty of them, but that's Rabbi Meir. Some other teachers, Natan of Bavel, okay. But in terms of leadership, he was the continuation, the lineage of King David, and that's why he was allowed to receive the title Hanasi. By the way, and his grandson also had the title that wasn't the same, but he was Rebbe and Yehuda Hanasi, and he obtained a great knowledge and a great stanza on the hierarchy of the Sanhedrin, and for 30 years he ruled over the problems the politics and the leading and the rabbinical and the ethical leading of the Jewish people in that time. Remember, we are talking around what years we were talking around. We were talking, I think this, where was it?
60.
In 165 C to 220. So basically 165 to 2020. That was around his title. That was around when he was born. And as I said, 4 generations, around 100 years. That's good. Approximately from 135 to 217 was his time. So we can understand there was a Roman ruling, and he believed in good contact with the Romans. Remember, it's after the whole balagan with Rabbi Akiva and this and that, after the whole killing and stuff, it relaxed a bit. And he used to learn with a Roman called Antoninus. Some people say this Antoninus was, where let me read it, let me find it. Where does it say Antoninus? Emperor Antoninus Pious. Let me share this with you. Enter Antoninus Pious. Some say was this guy. Some say was the Marcus Aurelius guy. If it matters to you what he looked like, if he was Gingy or not, I have no idea. Or Karsala or something like that. Doesn't matter what types of people, but he used to learn with him, and the Talmud brings down the questions, and in Avot it brings down the question. They had debates between them. One of the questions was about we talked about saying that inside has to look like outside, and Yitzchak is over here. Good to see you, Yitzchak. I didn't see you before. And many quotes that we said, and I'm going to bring now a few quotes that he brought down. He had it with this his secret friend from the Roman side, and this guy wanted to be gay, wanted to be Jewish. A whole story about that, but in the end, he was his friend, and he brought it down. But again, it shows that he learned the language of the land. He learned Greek. He had a relationship with the Greek, and he stood on his values. No liberal Judaism, no reform. He believed in straight orthodoxy, no change. And he stood for that, but with respect and with communication.
Was this, you said he was good with the Romans?
Yes.
So was
meaning
what, sorry?
Meaning that he was in a high level of influence to influence them for the needs of the community. As I said, he was a rich man.
Okay, so
was wealthy.
Was this before or after Masada?
Masada, I think, was way before.
Well, way before.
I think it was way before. Tzdukim, and that was way before.
That was before the fall of the temple.
So he made peace with the Romans after Masada.
I wouldn't say peace, but it was relaxed in his time. Yes, it wasn't a time of, like we know with Rabbi Akiva, the 10 martyrs, that they killed them and they slaughtered them. It wasn't the Greeks before, of course. It's after the first era, the Romans continuing later. And yes, they lived in Babylonia, and he was still in Israel, so he lived in Israel. But yes, it wasn't. Remember, it wasn't the time of a new king has arrived, a new king in Rome, a new Caesar. Okay. But again, as I said, there's many factors that were important for his thing. Now, remember, he wrote the Mishnah. Why did he write the Mishnah? Ian, why did he have to do something that was against Judaism? We don't want secrets to go out. We're like the chapter. How do you say the Slavonic? How do you call it?
What?
Paul?
Cyrillic?
Sorry? No, not Cyrillic. How do you call those people? The groups, the secret group.
Freemasons.
Freemasons. We don't want to share our secrets. There is an oral Torah and there's a written Torah. The written Torah, everyone can see. We don't want to share our oral Torah. It shouldn't be written. Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai revealed secrets, but he never wrote it down. How comes this Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi, change the eras, collects all the individual writings that happen, all the individual quotes, and memoirs that people had from father to father and say, let's write a book with a beginning, with a middle, with an end, with 6 layers, and everyone has a reason why what is before the other, exactly from A to Z, everything. How come David did he make such a decision, which is actually against the Torah, which is a sin? Do not write it down.
I mean, I don't know. I can't understand why it wasn't done earlier, because when you pass things from generation to generation, it's not quite, it loses something, doesn't it? So 1,000 years later,
as we say in the Talmud, what was the Havamina and what was the Maskana? What was the before thought and what was the afterthought? What happened until now and what changed? Why is this generation so, Yitzchak, and this question is to you, why is the generation of Rebbe so toxic that he had to make this major difference, which rabbis were against, and actually one of the reasons why the Bet Mikdash was destroyed in the Shivasa B'Tammuz, that they wrote it in 70 languages, and they wrote this and they wrote that. It's a problem to write. Why did he do such a thing, Yitzchak? What did you see in that generation? You're on mute. What did you see in that generation? You're on mute, Yitzchak. What did you see in that generation that he was in stress? And what verse, and I will teach you, what verse, and it's connected to Hanukkah, what verse did he use in the Torah to open up the permission to write it down?
I think he had to write it down because it was in danger there was quite a high danger of revisionism. You know, individual rabbis actually teaching their own interpretation of the Torah. And this was the first definitive collection of the Torah as he saw it handed down to Moses.
I wouldn't use the chutzpah of what you're saying. I wouldn't say that someone will have the chutzpah to write against, but I would say maybe people wouldn't know what is the. I wouldn't say they would write against their rabbis, but maybe there will be areas forget.
Because it's verbal, it's the teaching. There was no way of actually communicating. So across the whole of Judaism, what he wanted to do was to make sure that everybody basically had the same message.
Very good, very good. Ian, what do you say?
I don't know. Maybe he did it for his own benefit to start off with.
Why?
Maybe
Why?
he didn't
Why?
have. I'm just surmising.
No, but why would he? What would he gain from it?
Well, maybe he was obsessive, and he had so much knowledge, but he was the sort of person who had to reduce it to writing.
Why? Well, think about it in those days. There is a Shabbos, there is Muktzeh, there is, I don't know, Yom Kippur. There is not to write down oral halacha. Okay, one of the Averos, suddenly he has an urge to write down what, to get fame? Well, he's the richest guy in the world. He doesn't need fame. He talks to God. Why does he, remember, he is a leader. He's thinking about the generation. What was in it in that generation that he felt that's such a need that it would get lost? Why was that generation different than the generation before? Lionel.
Well, I think a lot of people have touched upon it. I mean, you were living in the Greek Empire, in the Roman Empire. Assimilation was very pronounced, no doubt, like it is today. If he did, and he was afraid, I suppose, that we will lose very soon now our knowledge of the oral Torah, because as David says, you know, well, that wasn't quite the same point, but you lose it because you're in you're in a Roman Empire. Everything's becoming Roman.
No, so you have to have a transition to pass it over. And let me add something more. Let me add that on that moment, he used a verse called Et lasot laHashem heferu toratecha. There is a time that you have the obligation, and this is why it's so important to this day, to break the laws of the Torah in order to keep the Torah. Wait a second. I am breaking Shabbat in order to do Shabbat. That's exactly what it is. It says you could break one Shabbat in order to keep many Shabbat. Why are we allowed to go to the hospital if someone is dying on Shabbat? Because if you save him today, he will do another 100 Shabbatot. And the same thing is with reading. If we write it now today, they will learn and continue. If you don't break it now, they will forget about it. They won't learn at all. So if the only answer is to break it in order to make it, you got to break it in order to.
That's what I said, but I may be wrong. I thought that's what.
But that doesn't answer the question as to why.
Of course, that's what you said. But I'm saying, where did he get it from? He got it from the principle. Well, how can he go against? How can he break Shabbos, Liner? I know. It's mind blowing. But how can a rabbi, with all the respect, like Kim said, he's making up his own halachot. He's doing whatever he wants and breaking the laws of the Torah. He can't do that. Who gives him the permission to do that?
Well, so what's the answer?
No, Lionel said he knows the answer.
Well, what is it, Lionel?
Well, I cannot. No, I'm repeating myself. This was a time at which the prospect of total assimilation and forgetting the oral Torah was quite probable. And in order to save the Torah, you have to break the Torah. In other words,
good. But my deeper question is, what was special in that generation? That didn't happen until that moment, and that's what I'm saying. What I'm saying. One second, Pinchas, are you with us or you're not with us? I want to hear your voice. I want to hear what you think.
He's gone.
He's not gone. He's always here.
I'm good.
You have a keep on, yeah?
Yeah, of course I do.
Good. Okay. No more hair.
I'm kind of in. I'm in. Totally, obviously, in agreement with what the others are saying. That he almost felt panicked and desperate to pass it on. But what you're saying, I think, is something unique had happened to that generation. I don't know. Could they read? Were they more educated? Obviously, we've all said that. It was in a terrible situation, and there was assimilation and rebellion, etc. We know it became unbearable. But that's basically what everyone's saying anyway.
So yes.
But that would have occurred at some stage in the previous 1,000 years.
Okay. Why was now different? Okay.
Well, that's what we're waiting for.
Remember,
we're all waiting.
We don't know.
You're waiting.
Basically.
These guys know it. I know you're waiting. Thank you. Lionel knows it. Paul is giving an opinion. I want to hear Yitzchak.
Wait a second. Lack of rabbis. We had a lot of rabbis.
Okay, good. Yitzchak, 1 second. Yitzchak.
There are many now, have you?
Another dimension that doesn't detract from what's been said.
Very good. That's what I like.
The Jews started to spread out across the world, and so they were going to be remote from one source. So
not yet. The future will be the future. He foresaw the future.
That's right, though, wasn't it? That time.
He's not a prophet, remember. Prophets finished in the first temple, and the end of the first temple, second temple, and after there's no prophets. Right? So what did he saw?
People were going to flee persecution and go all over.
He saw the character of the generation, and that's exactly why. He learned Greek. He saw the character of the nation. He was wealthy. He was relaxed in his decision. He wasn't hasty on his decision. He saw the situation. He was in a very, very clear mode to see that this generation is a turning point for the Jewish people. They won't just rely on who says, I say, you say. They won't just rely on listening carefully exactly what the other rabbi says. Remember, Hillel and Shammai already started to devote two. It was once 1, and then from Hillel and Shammai, this rabbi says Ashkenazi, Sephardi, this one says A, this one says B, and it's starting to separate. And he saw that too many opinions, too many thoughts, too many runs around. We need to have order, and that's why it's called order Mishnah, Seder Mishnah, order. It wasn't about revealing just the content, which Lionel was talking about, but it's also the order of things.
How did his teachers and other rabbis react to this departure?
So he was the Nasser. Remember, it's a checkmate move. He has the power to do so. He is the Nasi of the generation. And therefore, in the beginning, you say, well, what do you do? Okay, you have to bring a proof from the Torah. You can't just make up stuff. And he brought a proof, as it says.
Maybe that is the complete difference then. Now I think about it. Perhaps in every previous generation, you would have had the same thing. You would have had exactly the same thing. But here you had the uniqueness of the situation. I hadn't thought about it, but the uniqueness now was in the previous generations, in the time of Hillel, as you said, in the time of Rabbi Akiva, even Rabbi Akiva, there was no one person who had all the power, absolutely all the power. So therefore comes a time if you've got all the power,
Yep.
you can do it. If you don't, if there are other
Perfect.
rabbis who would disagree
Perfect.
with you, you can't do it. But if there's no rabbi who could gainsay you, who could argue with you because you had everything under your control, then you can do it. Because the previous Rabbi Akiva couldn't do it. He had there were different views. There were great rabbis there who would have disagreed. Hillel couldn't do it because of Shammai. All of them had a problem. He did.
Let me give some flavor to it. And I'm saying we don't know what they went through, but we know that if he did it that time, he had the right moment. And again, I want to talk about Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi and a little bit bring out, we have a few more minutes, bring out who was that type of person. This is part of his quotes. And listen to this. What is the right way for man to choose? What is the right way for man to choose? That which is honorable in his own eyes, and at the same time honorable in the eyes of his fellow men. Quote number 2, be as careful with a light mitzvah as a serious one, for you do not know the reward given for mitzvahs. Calculate the loss of mitzvahs against its gain, and the gain of a sin against its loss. Look at 3 things and you will not come to sin. Know what is above you, an eye seeing and ear listening, and all your deeds are written in the book. Look not at the jar, but upon what is inside. Many a new jar is full of wine, and many an old jug does not even contain new wine. I don't know what many. Much have I learned from my teachers, more from my colleagues, but most from my students. Why is the story of Nazirite? Okay, that's a different story. Let your secret be known only to yourself, and do not tell your neighbor anything which you perceive may not fitly be listened to. Great is work for whoever does not work. People speak about him. From what does man eat? From what does he drink? Great is work for whoever works. His hands is never missed a coin in his pocket. I'm leaving you with these quotes. There's many quotes out there. I want you to look around. You'll find many quotes about Rebbe, about his relationship with his Antoninus, about his fellow rabbis. But most importantly, my part as Rabbi Zerbib from Northwood, I want to just leave you with a connection to today's world. And I think that the same way Rebbe had a moment that he had to change history because the generation was unique and different. I think today, more than ever, we have to change our way of education, be firm with our beliefs and not to move a halakha, not to go around and say Christians and this and that and whatever, to be firm in who we are and to be able to love and greet everyone and make sure they will communicate with the Torah, giving them the access. The same way we broke it down to letters, we need to break it down to TV, to videos, to Bitcoin and to NFT and to Facebook and to whatever is new and fashionable and technological and relatable to this generation. We need to bring it down to them. And if it takes to blind one eye and to go Shabbos and to do another Shabbos, yes, we do. Do you want to save the generation, or do you want to sit back and let the work be done by someone else? Maybe yes, maybe not. Or you want to be the president, you want to be the Nasi, you want to be the leader, just like Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi. And I believe that every one of us has to be the leader, has to be the leader of ourselves, has to be the leaders of our family, has to be the leaders of our tribe, of our community, of our friends in our nation. And Bezat Hashem, we will only hear good hearings and be strong like a lion. Yehuda is a lion. He was the Nasi, he was the lion. The descendants of David will continue to this very day. Amen.
Amen.
Any questions? Yes, Yitzchak. You have 5 questions, I see.
Right.
Yeah, Ian, any questions from the light up there?
A lot of questions, but they will involve us in a lot of discussion. And we probably don't have the time.
What do you take about Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi? What do you take about that time, and what can we learn of that small part of history?
He obviously someone who was prepared to take control of a situation which could only be done by a man of his standing and position. But he had to be brave, and he had to carry other people with him, because there's no point in writing the Mishnah if you don't actually broadcast it.
Yeah.
So he was obviously very influential.
100%. And I have to add that I think one of his greatness was that he was a billionaire. And not to be seen as someone, if there was a rabbi today, Lionel, the chief rabbi of Israel, or let's say Rabbi Pinchas Brooks, I'll just give an example. He was a rabbi, let's say, and he was a billionaire. Would that bother you? Would you look? One second. Would you look what is he dealing with his money? Is he using it for the right purpose? No. Of course, we will ask him. Are you doing? And that's what Rabbi Yehuda, when he died, he said, I used everything for others, not for myself. I have nothing for my name. I didn't enjoy nothing for myself. How can you say such a thing?
Because that's why, despite all that you said so passionately, we don't have such a person. We do not have such a person. And worse, and therefore we have to pray. We have to pray that there will be someone who has so much authority that all the things that need to be fixed in the Orthodox religion will be fixed. But we can't fix it without a Nasi. Better that he's an Elon Musk. Much better. He's not Jewish. That won't do. Better, yes.
But can I tell you a secret? There's one guy over here. He looks normal, but he's soon going to be a billionaire, so he can fix that part.
I don't know who that is. Must be
one of the guys here in the shir. He's going to be a billionaire, and he can fix soon a lot of things. One of us. But it has to be a rabbi. It has to be a person that knows how to speak Greek and that. Connected. It has to be a guy that has the will and doesn't take nothing for himself. Find me that man. And David, what's the message you took from this shir, David?
Well, I'm not really sure, because this guy, I know you said he had plenty of money, he was powerful, but you're actually saying he could force the Beth Din to do what he wanted? He
cannot force, but he can. He was on a mental level, on intellectual level, to debate and to push them down and to win the court on this subject, and he won.
Cleverer than 70 other Rabbanim.
Yeah, but he was the head of, and he got, guys, it's time to do it, and he persuaded.
Let's say he'd been so clever without the gelt, would you still be able to do it?
See, that's the question I want you to ask yourself. That's exactly what Lionel's saying. There are sometimes in history that Hashem wants that someone that is, where's Mashiach? Mashiach has to be rich. He has to be a king. He has to be. There's sometimes in history, King David. Why does the king need money? Because Hashem wants it to be perfection. Not Joseph. This parsha we connected to the Hanukkah. Hanukkah is also about the thing, but let's not jump. Joseph had to be a king, had to have money, had to be smart. It says Hakim, he was smart, and had to do it by himself, IKEA style, in order to get where he was.
So just finally, for me, who in more recent times would be of that caliber?
I would jump and say Rambam. I would jump and say Shulchan Aruch. I would jump and say Rashi. There's great leaders that, even in the Chofetz Chaim, he was a leader. He didn't have money. He gave everything to himself, but he moved, whatever he said moved thousands of things. But that was before the war. After the war,
okay. Yeah.
Look where we are today, but we have a few rabbis, but not like as
Rabbi. We've got to hope that you will become a billionaire.
Amen. Amen. I'm listening carefully. Amen.
Amen.
Yeah, Pinchas, any questions before you close? I know it said half an hour. Sorry that I went out 6 minutes. Any questions?
No. Very informative. I like the passion. Love the passion.
Very good. Yitzhak?
Point that I learned that the National Library in London, right, has got the first published version in its entirety. That's a 15th century document of the Mishnah, the whole Mishnah. And it's been
Which library, Kim?
British
Sorry.
Library.
Is it
The
for
British
sale?
Library.
Is
The
it for
British
sale?
Oh,
otherwise called the National Library, the British Library, yes.
Is it,
Oh,
is it
wow.
for sale? The billionaire over here wants to buy it. Is it for sale?
He's muted the billionaire, and he's